Okay, good morning. We are on Yud Zayin Amud 17b1, second paragraph. I apologize for any noises coming from planes flying overhead. It's quite noisy over here. Amar Papa. Okay, Rav Papa comes along and says like this: even according to the one who said that tumah capacity of beverages is biblical, mashke beis matbechaya hilchos gemirla. Nonetheless, he could hold that the beverages of the butchering place are tahar. Why? Where did that come from? Because it's halach l'moshe misinai. Okay, what Rav Papa is kind of trying to say is as follows: until now, we've assumed that if you are going to waive tumah in the Beis HaMikdash, the only way that could happen, tumah of the liquids, which is what Yosef ben Yezer said, the only way that could happen is if the tumah is rabbinic. If the tumah is rabbinic, because then you could say, okay, in a regular place you're going to say it's tameh, and in the Beis HaMikdash you're going to waive the tumah. But if you hold it's biblical, then how would they waive the tumah in the Beis HaMikdash? The rabbis don't have the authority to go override a biblical law, and therefore the assumption until now was we have to say that the capacity for liquids to be tameh is dirabanan, is only rabbinic. But now Rav Papa's coming along and saying no. Really, you could say that the capacity for beverages to become tameh, that beverages become tameh, is actually biblical. So in which case, why did Yosef ben Ezra say that there's no tumah of the liquids in the butchering place in the Beis HaMikdash? That is a halacha l'moshe misinai. What is halacha l'moshe misinai? It's literally that. It's a halacha that Moshe received at Sinai. It was not written in the Torah, but it's an oral tradition that gets passed on. And the Gemara is going to challenge this assumption that the purity of the beverages in the butchering place it comes from Lach Mishmi Sinai. It's going to be questioned from two questions. Amar Le'er of Huna Breder of Nasnar Papa. Question number one. Velahad Amar Rav Elazar. That the Rav Elazar said in Tumas Lamashkin Kolikar. Rav Elazar wanted to prove that tumah does not apply to beverages in biblical law. And what was his proof? Teda. He brought a proof. Yosef ben Ezra straight out because the fact that Yosef ben Ezra testified about the beverages of the butchering place, they are tahar. Now, what's his proof? His proof is, he says, how could Yosef ben Ezra come along and say that the tahar? It must be that the way he did so is because it's a rabbinic law, and the rabbis have the ability to waive it. And in general, there is no. And what comes out is that in general there is the liquids becoming tameh is only rabbinic. Now, if you want to tell me v'hilchasa gemirla, if you want to tell me that the exclusion of beverages in the Beis HaMikdash is halacha mishmei Sinai, then you can't derive anything from it. In other words, if you say there's no halacha mishmei Sinai, then you could say, okay, so there's no halacha mishmei Sinai, there's no tradition, there's no oral tradition, and the fact that Yosef ben Ezra is able to waive, Yosef ben Ezra is telling us the rabbis did not have tumah of liquids in this place. That could be a proof to the fact that liquids in general are only tamei midrabanan, and you could say, what's the proof? The proof is that Yosef ben Ezra is telling us it didn't apply in the Beis HaMikdash because the rabbis waived it. And we can infer from there that it's only rabbinic. But if you want to tell me that the liquids in the Beis HaMikdash, the fact it wasn't tamei, is because of Lach Mishmei Sinai, then there's no inferences from there to other liquids in general because there's halacha mishmei Sinai. Halacha mishmei Sinai is telling us it's exceptional. It's intrinsically exceptional. That's question number one. We know the Rashi. Rabbi Shimon Amar tumas mashkin d'oraisa. We have Rav Shimon who told us that tumah capacity beverages is biblical. Where do we know that from? The time he was taught Rabbi Yosef, Rav Shimon Omrim lekelim torim l'ochlim tmeim. Rav Shimon said that when liquids come to touch, when foods touch tamei liquids, it is, and you're not sure if it did. So you have liquids which are tamei. You're not sure if it touched food. We're going to treat it stringently. We're going to be mitame. Why would we be mitame? Because we hold that it's that the tumah of liquids is midoraisa. Okay, so that's Rav Shimon's view. Rav Shimon said in regards to the liquids, the beverages of the butchering place, became tamei b'karka torin. If the beverages of the butchering place were contaminated, were contained in vessels, they are tamei. But if they were gathered in the ground, they are tahar. Okay, now. If so, halacha mishmei Sinai telling us that there is a purity to these liquids, then what difference does it make if it's in a utensil or it's in the ground? If you say it's rabbinic, then there's a big important difference because that the liquids are tamei in the ground is something which is only really rabbinic. When liquids are in the ground, when they're in like a spring or things like that, then liquids are not able to be matame. It's only able to become tamei. It's only rabbinically that we can make that distinction. So if you say that the whole liquid thing is dirabanan, then this all makes sense. But if you want to tell me halacha mishmei Sinai telling us it's going to be tahar, then you would say it's tahar across the board, whether it's in a utensil, whether it's in the ground. It should not make a difference. Bottom line is, Kash, the Gemara says, yes, these are indeed difficulties, and we basically are rejecting our Papa's view that says that liquids of beis matachaya, of the beverages of the butchering place are tahar and halacha mishmei Sinai. We are rejecting that. Amar Papa. Now we go further. Rav Papa now tells us that Rav Shimon, who just told us above that the liquids, the beverages that are in the ground are tahar, that in the butchering place, lo shana l'mayim, that's only water. Well, down low, they're not blood. Umayim nami. And also regarding water, I'm going to have a revius. It has to be a revius there. It has to be a revius about 3.2 ounces to have the chaz l'tvila base mechatim tenoros. Why? Because it has to be large enough that you could immerse needles or spinning forks, very small things, in it. Avelo have a revius command, but if it does not have a revius of liquid, then that liquid is tummy. So Rav Shimon basically is telling us. Papa is explaining Rav Shimon to be telling us that that he distinguished between beverages that are in the water versus in a utensil, that he said the ones in the ground, when they're in a ground or tahar, that's only because it's really fit to be a mikvah. So how does it fit to be a mikvah? A, it has to be water, and B, it has to be the size of revius. Now, most things can't be immersed in that, but there are some things like a pin that could be immersed in a water that's revius. So once we're on the topic, I'll just mention very briefly, people ask all the time about using, we have kalim mikvahs, we have utensil mikvahs, like in, most normal Jewish cities, I think, all of them, I should say, and sometimes people want to use a stream or stream to immerse things. That's not so simple. It really depends. If it's fresh water and there is a revius would it'd have to be larger than revius. It'd have to be something which is able to hold 40 sa. It has to be it has to be a large running stream of water, and with natural water, that the water wasn't sometimes you have situations where the water kind of goes through whether it's a dam or goes through some processing of some sort. It's usually not with a stream. Usually that's going to be with a river or a lake. But the bottom line is, technically a stream you could be tovel items in. A natural stream you could be tovel items in. I would not recommend going ahead and immerse something in something which is small, like revius. That would not be allowed. I would have to be bigger than that. Okay, Amar Papa, even those who say that some capacity of beverages. My page actually went back when I wasn't looking. Okay, Amar Mar. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says, we're at 17b2. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lekol tamei. Rabbi Yehuda said that anything that beverage is touched, even in a situation of a doubt, is going to be tummy. Whether you touched utensils, whether you touched utensils, even if it touched utensils, it's still going to be tummy. So again, you have a tummy beverage, and it may have touched utensil. Or Yehuda says, even if it may have touched it, we're gonna treat it as tummy out of doubt. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say this? Because he holds tumas mashkin l'tamei tumas kelim d'oraisa. He must hold that the capacity of tummy beverages to contaminate utensils is actually biblical. That's not. Yet we have a contradiction. Because why? Because we have a brisa, a mishnah that says like this: any utensil has an exterior and an interior. Okay, meaning it has something in the middle, something inside of it, and it also has an outside. For example, you have pillows, right? A pillow is, you have the outside, the part of the thing, and then inside, there's where you put the you put the fluff, there's probably a better word for that. I'm really tired. Sorry. The wool and whatever it is, to the cotton, things in order to keep to fill the pillow, cushions, sacks, leather bags, all those things is nitmu tocho, nitmu gabo. If the interior was contaminated, meaning if like a sheret, a dead rat goes inside of it, then nitmu gabo, the exterior is also tummy. Nitma gabo, nitma tocho. But if the exterior was contaminated, its interior is not tummy, right? So if the rat touches the outside, then the inside, things are on the inside, not tummy. Amar Rav Yehuda comes along and qualifies this. I don't know, people live here with all this noise. Amar Rav Yehuda b'medvar murim. When was it stated? Nitmu machmas mashkin. Only when they were contaminated by beverages. Aval nitmu machmas sheretz. But if this distinction between inside outside is only if it became contaminated by beverages. But if it became tummy by a sheretz, nitmu tocho, nitmu gabo, the interior, if the interior was contaminated, its exterior is tamei, nitma gabo, nitma tocho, and if the exterior was contaminated, its interior is tamei. In other words, Rav Yehuda says, if it's liquid, then there is this distinction that was just mentioned above. But if it's a sheretz, then whether it became tamei on the inside, tamei on the outside, it's going to be tamei. And if you want to say that according to Yehuda, the capacity of tummy beverages to contaminate other things is deraisa, what difference is there? If liquids really have the capacity to become tummy, then who cares if it was a sheretz, the rodent, or it was a liquid? Both cases are tummy to be deraisa. So Rabbi Yehuda says, name Rav Shmuel, that Rabbi Yehuda the Tana actually retracted his ruling. Initially held it was deraisa, but then he went back and said it's derabanan, and that's how we make sense of the brisa. Ravina gives another answer. Really, he didn't go back. There's two types of liquids. They're different. Not all the tummy liquids are created equal. There's a tummy liquid which came in contact with a rodent, which is full-fledged first-degree tuma. And then you have liquid which became tummy because it touched tummy hands. It touched tummy hands. It's going to be a fourth-degree tuma. That's a much lower level. Okay. Excuse me, not 14, which means sheni level, second level. Okay, so that's going to be something which is rabbinic, and that's why, and therefore there's no contradiction. Really holds liquids, we do have the capacity to become tamei, but that's on the first level. But some hands of a liquid which comes into contact with tamei hands, that is a rabbinic decree that it's second degree tuma. That's the second price. That's the Mishnah where made the distinction between inside and outside. So why did Rav Yehuda come along and say, make a distinction? Well, whether it was become tamei by liquid or whether it become tamei by sheretz, and that's why we made the distinction. We always want to make the distinction within a Mishnah as tight as possible. So Rav Yehuda came along and said, yeah, when did that halacha apply? When it became tamei by sheretz. But when it comes to tamei by liquid, no. But now we're saying even within liquids, there's types of liquids. So what Rav Yehuda really should have said is, when is this true? When it came tamei by liquid, that came into contact with the sheretz. But when it came to tamei by liquid, that became tamei by touching hands, then that's when those distinctions would apply, right? So make a distinction within liquids as opposed to contrasting liquids and physical, and shratzim. So what he should have done is said, when is the halacha about the distinction between inside and outside? When is that true? When it's liquids become touching tummy hands. But if it's a beverage became tummy and account to touching a sheretz, then there is no difference. Okay, Gemara says you're right. We're going to go back to the first answer. There's such a good question. We're going to go back to the first answer. Rabbi Yehuda really retracted his ruling. Initially he held it was tummy midaraisa liquids, but now he retracted and holds that liquids are only tummy midarabanan. Ibailu. Now we have a question. When that the Rav Yehuda went back, did he go back regarding utensils? Okay, that we know, right? Is it only regarding utensils that he went back? Because we saw him now talking about kalim, utensils, and contrasting between inside, outside, which implies that he's holding that it's rabbinic. So we know he retracted certainly about as it relates to touching utensils, and there he holds it's rabbinic. But Oakland, when it comes to the capacity of beverages to contaminate food, does he hold like Rabbi Yosef Shimon who hold that it is that is biblically tamei, or did he completely retract and hold that even when it comes to food, that it's going to be only rabbinic? It's only rabbinic. So we're going to try to answer the question from the following interesting case. Tashma, parasha shasa mechatas. Okay, if a cow drank purification water, what is purification water? We have a paraduma, we have a red heifer, and what we do is we burn that red heifer. We take its ashes, we mix it together with liquid, and then we sprinkle that on people who are tamei. That when we dealt with tumantara of this nature. Now there is a unique law. It's a very well known law, like almost like ironic, strange. It's seen as like the quintessential chok, the quintessential decree, which is hard to understand, which is that although this liquid is used for a purification and it causes, if you were tamei and I sprinkled on you, you become tahar. But me, the sprinkler, I'd have to be a kohen. I'm not a kohen, but me, the sprinkler, I would actually become tamei. Okay, so the point is that this liquid, if it's the person that's purifying is going to become tahar, but the liquid itself is treated like an ava tuma. It's treated like the highest level of tuma. So the Gemara says, let's say you had a cow who drank that purification water. That'd be a disaster, by the way. That water was very exclusive, it was very pure, and it was a high commodity. And so you person burnt the red heifer and they left it in their farm, and the cow comes along and slurps it up. Okay, so bisara tamei, its flesh is tamei. The flesh of the animal is tamei. Meaning when you then go ahead, it's not going to be tamei a live person, but it's going to be tamei when you slaughter that animal. A short while after, let's say it drank that water, then you go and you slaughter that animal, then the flesh of that animal is tamei. Rav Yehuda says, Batlu b'mimeha. And he says, no, the water was nullified in the cow's intestines, and it lost its capacity to contaminate. We're now on 18a1. It's not going to contaminate. Okay, therefore the flesh is tahar. And if you want to tell me that the only thing he went back from was utensils, when it comes to food, Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon Svirle, he holds Rav Yossi Shimon that it's actually that liquids still have the capacity to be tamei d'oraisa. Why is it the water completely nullified in the cow's intestines? Nehida tuma chamura lo mitamu. Even though Rabbi Yehuda said that it's batal, it no longer. Basically, Rabbi Yehuda is saying is like this: when he says it's batal, when he says this liquid, this mechatas does not have the capacity from tamei, he's saying because since it's no longer able to be used, once the cow drinks it, you can't use it to sprinkle on someone, and therefore it drops down from its avatuma state. So therefore, mihid tuma chamur lo tamu, it's not able to be mitame on its severe degree of tuma kalami anitmu, but it should be able to contaminate the flesh with a slight degree of tuma, a lower level of tuma. In other words, meaning we know that when something is an avhatuma, the highest level of tuma, and it touches something else, that thing becomes a rishon l'tuma. So here too, this liquid, granted, it's no longer able to be used as to sprinkle because it lost its capacity. But so therefore, this water should be no worse. So now it drops it loses that status. But now it should be like liquid that touches. It should be like liquid that touches an avatuma, which should become tamei. The fact that Yehuda says it's not tamei at all shows me it's not tamei at all, which means that liquid does not have the capacity to be metamei. Anything, even biblically, even even meat, even food. So the Gemara says no. What does he mean when he said that the water is nullified? All he means the water is nullified in the sense that it cannot be metame on the highest level. But it could still contaminate on the lower level. Okay, but the Gemara says, wait a second, but that implies that the Tanakama was saying that the Tanakama. Remember again, Rabbi Yehuda was seemingly arguing with the Tanakama. Tanakama said that if it drank the purification water, its flesh is tameh. Then now we're saying Rabbi Yehuda holds that that he agrees the flesh is tameh, but it's just not that it's not on the highest level. It's not considered avatuma, but the flesh is still tameh. But that can't be because the Tanakama also seems to be saying exactly that. The Tanakama said habasara tameh katani. The Tanakama said that its flesh is tameh. Which implies that the water is able to make the flesh tameh, but that means the flesh itself is already going to be like a second degree and is not going to be, it itself is not going to be the highest degree, which would be that the water itself is a avatuma. Again, let me say that again more clearly. So the idea again, now we're establishing Rabbi Yehuda agrees that this liquid is going to be tameh. And that would say, and that would be able to back up the idea that he holds that liquid is able to be matame midaraisa. But then the implication is that Tanakama holds the Tanakama is obviously disagreeing with Rabbi Yehuda because they're saying, first we have the Tanakama, then we have Rabbi Yehuda saying something different. That would imply the Tanakama is saying that the liquid, the water, this water that was drunk by the cow is going to be on the highest level of tumah. The problem is that habisara tameh kitani. All the Tanakama said was that the flesh of this animal is tameh, which means it's a lower degree of tumah. Because if it was really the highest degree of tumah, then it should even be able to be matame not just the animal, right, which is food, but it should be able to be matame. The highest level of tumah is able to be matame other things. It's able to be matame people, utensils. And by saying habisara kitani implies that it's just the flesh which is tameh, which means that the Tanakama is the one who's saying it's on a lower degree, which means Yehuda is saying it's not tameh at all. Which again brings back to our questions. Where it says no, kula Yehuda. Really, the whole thing is Yehuda. We're missing words. Really, read the Brisa, the Mishnah is one long statement by Yehuda. If a cow drinks purification water, its flesh is tameh. Medvar morem tuma kala. And then when is this true? This is only for the lower level of tuma. Aval tuma chamura, but the higher level of tuma, low, it would not be able to do that at all. Sure, Yehuda omer batlu b'meya, because Yehuda holds that the water is nullified. Okay, so basically, we're saying there is no machlokas between Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda. It's just the whole price is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is coming along and saying that when a cow drinks this avatuma, it no longer loses its status of avatuma, but it is going to be the lower level of tuma, and therefore there is no question against Rabbi Yehuda, because again, we wanted to say that maybe Rabbi Yehuda still holds that when it comes to food, the beverages are able to be matami midaraisa, and there would be no question on that from this case. Rav Ashi says, because this case would actually be telling us that it would still be tami midaraisa. Rav Ashi Amar, really Rabbi Yehuda holds the water is completely nullified. It's not even going to have the lower level. Why? Because it's putrid beverage. In other words, really Rabbi Yehuda could hold that when beverages are able to be matami other foods midaraisa. So why over here when the cow licked up this, drank up this avatuma, why doesn't it not cause the liquid now to be able to at least be a rishon l'tuma? If you hold that beverages are able to be matami daraisa, the answer is because once he drank it, it became a putrid beverage, and therefore it no longer is able to cause tuma whatsoever. It's like lose its status as even called a beverage. If an animal drinks water or drinks something, it no longer is even called a beverage, and therefore it's completely precluded from the whole discussion of tuma entirely. We will pick up, God willing, tomorrow.